You know what's interesting? People often assume that someone who enjoys being alone must be lonely, maybe antisocial, maybe avoiding the world. But psychology suggests something very different, because the people who truly enjoy solitude are often not running away from life. They're simply experiencing it in a different way. Think about that person you know, the one who doesn't mind sitting alone at a cafe, the one who takes long walks without headphones, the one who sometimes disappears for hours just to think. And strangely, they don't look unhappy, they look calm, almost peaceful. But here's the part most people misunderstand. For some individuals, being alone isn't isolation, it's restoration. Their mind doesn't become quieter when people arrive, it becomes quieter when the world slows down. And in that quiet space, something interesting happens. Their thoughts become clearer, their emotions settle, their attention sharpens. Psychologists have been studying this pattern for years, and what they discovered is surprising. People who genuinely enjoy being alone often share a very specific psychological profile, one that modern society frequently misunderstands. So in this video, we're going to explore the psychology behind people who enjoy solitude, why some brains crave social stimulation, while others recharge in silence, and why enjoying your own company might actually reveal something powerful about the way your mind works. People who enjoy being alone exist everywhere. You probably know one. The co-worker who quietly eats lunch by themselves and seems completely comfortable with it. The friend who declines a party invitation but later talks about the peaceful night they spent reading. Or the person who goes for long walks with no destination and no need for conversation. To many people, this behavior looks strange. Our culture tends to associate happiness with constant connection. Being surrounded by friends, staying active socially, always having something happening. But for a certain group of people, solitude doesn't feel like absence. It feels like space. Space to think, space to breathe, space to exist without the subtle pressure that often comes with social interaction. And this difference in how solitude feels is where the psychology begins. Picture this. It's Friday night. Your phone lights up with messages. Friends are making plans. Someone suggests a crowded restaurant. Another recommends a loud bar downtown. Most people would feel excited, but your reaction is different. You glance at the messages, you smile politely, and then you set the phone down. Instead, you open a book, or step outside for a quiet walk, or sit near a window with a cup of coffee and your thoughts. And something unexpected happens. Instead of feeling like you're missing out, you feel calm, almost restored. For people who enjoy solitude, quiet moments don't drain energy. They restore it, and this reveals something important about how their nervous system works. For many people who grow comfortable with solitude, the roots begin early, not necessarily through hardship, but through independence. Maybe they spent long afternoons entertaining themselves as children, drawing, reading, building imaginary worlds. While others constantly sought company, they discovered something different. Their mind was interesting enough on its own. Over time, the brain begins forming associations. Solitude becomes linked with safety, with creativity, with freedom from social pressure. Psychologists describe this as a learned emotional environment. Repeated experiences teach the nervous system that being alone is not something to fear. It's something familiar, and once the brain learns this pattern, it begins to seek those moments of quiet, not as an escape from people, but as a return to psychological balance. Psychologists sometimes describe a concept called internal stimulation preference. In simple terms, some minds generate more internal activity than others. Thoughts, ideas, reflections, questions about the world. For people with this tendency, the mind is rarely bored. It constantly produces things to explore, which means silence isn't empty. It's full of ideas waiting to be examined, full of memories being processed, full of patterns the brain is trying to understand. While some people depend heavily on external stimulation, conversation, entertainment, activity, others receive that stimulation internally. Their brain doesn't require constant noise. In fact, too much external stimulation can feel overwhelming, and solitude becomes the environment where their mind functions best. Research has begun to support this pattern. A study published in the Journal of Personality found that individuals comfortable with solitude often score higher in self-reflection and emotional awareness. Time alone allows the brain to process experiences more deeply. Instead of reacting immediately to events, the mind has space to analyze them, to understand emotions, to organize thoughts. Solitude also supports creativity. When the brain is not constantly responding to external input, it begins connecting ideas in new ways. This is why many writers, scientists, and artists throughout history have intentionally protected time alone. For certain minds, solitude is not emptiness. It's a cognitive workspace. One surprising trait many solitary people develop is psychological independence. They become less dependent on external approval. Their identity is shaped more by internal reflection than by social feedback. This can create a powerful sense of self. When decisions arise, they rely less on group opinion and more on personal judgment. This independence also makes them more resistant to social pressure. Trends change, crowds shift their beliefs, but people who are comfortable being alone are often less affected by these movements, because their mental world is already active. Their sense of direction comes from inside, not from the noise around them. But there is an important paradox here. People who enjoy solitude are not necessarily antisocial. In fact, many of them value relationships deeply. They simply approach connection differently. Instead of seeking large social circles, they tend to prefer a small number of meaningful relationships, a few trusted friends, a few genuine conversations, depth rather than quantity. Crowded environments can feel overwhelming, not because they dislike people, but because too many social signals compete for attention. So they choose carefully. When they connect, they do so fully. But they also know the importance of returning to solitude, because that's where their emotional balance resets. Modern culture often sends a very clear message: be visible, be social, be constantly connected. Social media rewards activity. Notifications reward quick responses. Silence begins to look unusual. But people who enjoy solitude operate by a different rhythm. They recharge through quiet environments, through reflection, through mental space. Instead of broadcasting every experience, they process it privately. And this difference can easily be misunderstood. To someone who thrives on constant interaction, solitude may appear lonely. But to the solitary mind, it feels like clarity, like stepping out of noise and into focus. Another subtle difference appears in how solitary individuals process information. Many of them observe first. They listen carefully. They analyze situations before reacting. While others respond immediately, they pause. They think. They consider multiple perspectives. This slower cognitive style often leads to deeper insights. Because their brain spends more time examining patterns and emotions, they notice details others miss, a shift in tone, a subtle expression, a hidden meaning in conversation. Solitude trains the brain to observe quietly. And over time, this observation becomes a powerful cognitive skill. Today's world is louder than any previous generation experienced. Notifications arrive every few minutes. Messages demand instant replies. Entertainment never stops. For many people, silence now feels uncomfortable, almost unfamiliar. But historically, quiet reflection was once normal. Before smartphones, before endless digital noise, long periods of solitude were simply part of everyday life. People thought more, observed more, reflected more. Those who enjoy solitude today may simply be preserving an older cognitive rhythm, one that modern technology has slowly pushed aside. The truth is, enjoying solitude isn't a personality flaw. It's a different way of regulating the mind. Some people recharge through social energy, through conversation, through shared experiences. Others recharge through space, through silence, through time alone with their thoughts. Neither approach is better. They are simply different nervous system strategies. But understanding this difference changes how we interpret behavior, because someone who enjoys being alone is not necessarily disconnected from the world. They may simply be interacting with it in a quieter way. People who enjoy being alone aren't withdrawing from life, but they're listening to it differently. While the world grows louder and faster, they search for something quieter, moments where thought becomes clear, where emotion settles, where attention deepens. Because sometimes the most meaningful conversations aren't spoken out loud. They happen internally, in reflection, in curiosity, in quiet awareness. And maybe that's the real psychology behind people who enjoy being alone. Their mind doesn't need constant noise. It simply needs space to think. So the next time you meet someone who enjoys being alone, try not to assume they're lonely, or disconnected, or avoiding the world. Because for many people, solitude is not isolation. It's alignment. It's the moment when the mind slows down enough to hear its own thoughts clearly, when emotions settle, when ideas begin forming quietly beneath the surface. Some people recharge through conversation, through crowds, through shared experiences, but others recharge through silence, through reflection, through the rare ability to enjoy their own company. And maybe that's the real lesson here. The people who enjoy being alone aren't escaping life. They're simply listening to it from a quieter place. And sometimes the quietest minds see the world the most clearly.